In this video, we're going to make the leather ID lanyard. So let's get started. You're going to need the leather ID lanyard kit from Realeather, which we'll open up and go through in a second. You're also going to need a pair of scissors. You're going to need some dye if you want to dye the veg tan leather. I have some rubber gloves here, a container for the dye, and some paper towels. I also have wool daubers here to help spread the dye onto the leather. So with everything all gathered up, let's get started. First, let's open up the leather ID lanyard kit and see what comes inside. All right, so we have the ID window. We have the pocket. I'm gonna move this out of the way. We have the tab, and we have our thread with our needle. We have the swivel hook, and we have our cord to hang the lanyard off of. We have a piece of plastic to put into the insert, and then we have the middle piece. So these are all the pieces we need. Now, before we assemble our lanyard, I'm going to actually use the vintage gel dye and dye this black, and I'm going to show you how to do that next. So to start dyeing my leather, I'm going to first put on rubber gloves because the dye will stain your fingers as well as the leather. I'm going to work on a piece of parchment paper here so I could just lift up the pieces and move them if I need to so they can dry. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to open up and grab a wool dauber. This just makes it easier. This end is wool. It just makes it easier to get a nice, even, consistent layer of dye on the leather. So these are super handy, and yes, they're available from Realeather. I have a little cup here to put some dye in. I want to make sure that it has a seal on it. We don't need a whole lot, so I'm just going to put a little bit in there. Okay, now I'm going to lay out my pieces that I need to dye. Now that I have some on the dauber, I'm just going to, in a circular motion, spread the dye onto the leather. And this is where the rubber gloves come in handy. And then once you get the front done, you're going to dye the edges. See how nice and easy that goes on. And again, I'm just going to make sure that it's covered. So there's the little tab. Next up, we're going to dye the other pieces. So I'm just going to speed this up and you can watch me put the dye on. So now that you saw how to dye this piece and I've stitched it together, I realized that it's going to be harder for you to see these stitches on here. So I'm going to go ahead and stitch together this natural leather one that I have not dyed so you can follow along on how to stitch it together. Now that the needle is threaded, we're ready to put our three pieces together. We're going to put the pocket rough side up. We're going to put the middle section rough side up. And we're going to put the frame smooth side up. Make sure that the part with no holes is at the top. To start sewing, you're going to first go through hole number 2 of just the frame. You're going to leave about a 3-inch tail in the end that you can tie off when we finish. After you've done that, you're going to go through the top hole, hole number 1, and you're going to go through the frame in the middle section. The pocket holes don't go that high. And we're going to just pull everything nice and snug. Now you're going to go back through hole number 2 and down through hole number 3. Now you're going to go through the back through hole number 4, and now we're going to catch the top of the pocket. And then down through hole number 5. You're going to continue to stitch around in this manner, and I'm going to show you here where you can see you get a stitch, and then you get a space, and then you get a stitch. So you can see there's a space and a space. We're going to catch these spaces when we come back around, but this is how it should look going all the way around. So we're going to keep going. Okay, so I've done the first round of stitching. You can see what that looks like, front and back. And now we're going to go back by going through this hole and then when we come up through here, it's going to fill that gap with the stitch. And so I'm going to run that, let me pull this tight. We're going to run that all the way around to finish stitching the front to the back. So we have one space on the back. To finish that stitch, we're only going to go through the middle piece and come out in between the 2 layers. And now we can tie off the 2 ends and cut off our thread. So you're going to go with a square knot, first half, second half. So now you can see all stitched. There's your pocket. Now we have to do the top half of the lanyard. So to do that, we're going to put the swivel hook onto the tab, and this tab will fold down and meet the holes that are on the inside of the piece. So it folds in like that. So we're going to go ahead and stitch that in place the same way. We're going to go through just the right hole, just the upper tab hole, and leave our tail to tie off. Align our holes, go through both the upper tab and lower holes to make your first stitch. Pull everything snug, leaving your tail. Then we're going to go from the back right hole, and I'm going to do a double stitch, so I'm going to go through the right tab hole. I'm going to do one more stitch, and then this time when I come up, I'm going to come up in between the 2 pieces so I could tie off my thread. So I've just gone between the 2 pieces, and I came up in the middle. Now I'm going to tie off with a square knot, and I'll have my swivel piece attached. And then we're going to just trim off our ends. There you go. Now I've got that one stitched up, and we're ready to add our cord. To add the cord, this is pretty thick to get it to go through the hole. So what I recommend is taking your scissors and cutting it at an angle to create a point at the end of the lacing. That way you can feed it through the tab from the rough side to the smooth side. There we go. Now we got both ends thread through. You can now clip this on here and you can measure this cord, and if it's too long you can trim it off, but you can adjust the length by sliding the tab up and down the cords. Last step, slide your plastic insert in and your lanyard is ready.